What's up everybody? I'm Lee Williamson and I'm a motion designer. To my subscribers, you may have noticed that I've not been on YouTube for a while. That's because I went through burnout and depression. I lost my confidence in recording tutorials, so this is me getting back on the horse. Today I'm going to be creating some procedural cartoon clouds inside of After Effects to make your life 10 times easier. So let's dig in. So we are going to create a new composition and we're going to create a small triangle, just a 3-point shape. And I'm going to pull up my strokes nice and thick, and for now turn off my fill. And I'm going to go to my shape layer. I can say enter, let's just call this cloud. Press UU on my keyboard. Then I can see my strokes, and I'm going to go down to dashes. I'm going to press 1, 2, 3 dashes. I'm going to change my line caps to round, and I'm going to drag up the size of my gaps on my dashes, and I'm going to bring my my dashes down to 0 and my gaps up, and I'm going to keep pulling my gaps until I get 3 circles. Then I'm going to drag my offset until I get the circles roughly on each corner. Okay. So the next step is, well, actually, if we animate this offset, you notice how the circle kind of disappears in the corner there. So here's a heads up, we are not going to animate the cloud with the offset of the dashes. So we're going to be doing that with trim paths, but I'm going to return to that nugget as I work my way through this tutorial. So the next step is we're going to go to our strokes now, and we press Ctrl D, and we're going to duplicate those exact same strokes we had before, but this time we go to our dashes and we pull the offset to take the dashes next to the next circle, right? And then we're going to take our strokes and we're going to make that stroke much bigger. Now you can see the formation of that cloud starting to already shape itself nicely. And then we're going to Ctrl D again, and we're going to create another stroke, and we're going to do exactly the same thing again. We go into our dashes and we're going to move our offset, and then we could possibly make that stroke, let's say, smaller. Okay. Now I can go into my strokes by pressing the search here to see my strokes and updating these manually, yeah, but it would be a lot easier if we're able to control these better. So I'm going to drag a slider from my my effects presets menu. Okay, so we've got a slider here, so slider control, and we press Control D, and duplicate 3 of the sliders, and I can press enter and call this stroke 1, enter stroke 2, enter stroke 3. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy and paste my values here so that I don't forget them into that presets there. Okay, and my third stroke, I'll paste it in there, and then I will just connect them up. So I'm going to take my pick whip and I'm going to drag my stroke 1 to the clock of stroke 1, pick whip stroke 2 to the clock of stroke 2, and clock 3 to the stroke of clock 3. Now I can just edit these circles straight from here rather than having to manually go in there all the time. Now remember what I mentioned about, okay, let me just say that first of all, clouds 2. Remember what I mentioned about trim paths. So to animate the cloud, so I'm going to press UU on my keyboard and I'm going to go to add over here, click on that and click trim paths, and then open up that menu, and I'm going to press Alt, click on the stopwatch, and I'm going to type in time asterisk and 50. Okay, and what that's going to do is it's just going to make it continually move. Now, first of all, you'll note that there's a bit of a gap between my clouds. So that's easy to resolve. We can click on the cloud and we can go back to that fill that I got rid of earlier and just change that to white. Okay, so now there's no gap. And secondly, well, a cloud isn't shaped like a triangle, so we can fix that too. You go into your pen tool and you choose convert vertex tool. Okay, that's that one that looks like a little arrow. And then you click over the corner and you drag. So you click drag and it will put the handles on the corners. So now we have a really simple cloud animated. Now I'm going to save this as cloud template. Now, you may not want your cloud to be a fill, you may want it to be a stroke. So I'll show you how you do that. We're going to duplicate this template. I'll call this cloud outlines. Okay, and click on that. And we're going to go into our effects tool and we're going to choose something called Vegas. All right, if you look really closely, there's a faint yellow outline in there. So we're going to drag our width up, okay, on that effect. We're going to drag our hardness up, and we're going to drag our end opacity up all the way to the top. So now we've got a solid outline. And then all we need to do is take our start opacity, wait, not our start opacity, we go into our blender mode and we click on transparent. And there we have it. We have a transparent cloud with just the outline, and we can change the color to white. And then, so we don't want our thickness to be that much. So I can bring my thickness down. Let's just say it's about that size, where we have that perfect cloud. Now, when you're creating a cloud with your Vegas tool, since this is now an effect, not a preset on the shape, you won't have something like trim paths, but there is a nice little alternative here. So under your segments, you have a length. So the cool thing is you can take that length and you can either have a dotted line, or if you change it to bunched, your length can now be just like a trim path. So you could animate that trim path coming on, which is fantastic. The downside is that when you do animate it, it's not as perfect and smooth. I'm just going to drop a keyframe just to show you what I mean. It's not as smooth as the other trim paths is. So let me take that and just reverse my keyframes because I animated in the wrong order. So notice as it animates on, actually that's not too bad, but sometimes you get a bit of a weird blink on it too. Yeah, so that's not too bad at all. I'm pretty stoked with that. So yeah, you do have a trim paths inside of there, and you could change that back to even and pull your segments apart. Wait, where is it now? Like that. And who knows, they can kind of animate on in little circles. Right, so you may want to have the cloud be a little bit more, less kind of straight out the box in the design that I'd created. So if we go back to our template, I'm going to duplicate it again. Let's just call this like a complex cloud. Okay. And let's click on the complex cloud. Say this is just too smooth looking. So what I could do is I could put a turbulence displacement on it. Okay, turbulence displace, drag it on there. I don't even need to animate the evolution of the displacement because the clouds kind of move through the shape. So you get that nice kind of organic looking cloud. Now, perhaps you want the cloud to be a little bit more complex. So what we could do is we press Control D and we could move the cloud over here. And we could press Control D again and move one cloud on the top there. Now we could just drag out the paths of one single cloud to do the same effect. But say you wanted to, let's say, press U on the keyboard and go at times and reverse the order of the top cloud. So I press minus on the top cloud, and now the top cloud is going to go in reverse. So now we've got a much more complex looking cloud where the rotations are changing in multiple areas, which give a much more interesting looking cloud. Now say you didn't want a cloud, you wanted perhaps, let's say, a plume of smoke. So I can say Control D, and we'll call this plume. I'm going to double click on my plume. Okay, and UU on the keyboard, we're going to get our path out and we're going to drag the two corners up and one down. And then I'm going to add 2 extra points on my plume so that I can give a slightly more complex shape, so that I can bring the plume nice and tight in here, and perhaps let's just say, we can kind of go off at an angle, which just feels more, that's nice. But the downside is, if you notice, it's traveling down and one's traveling up. On a plume of smoke, doesn't go that way, it kind of travels up. So we can resolve that. So I'm going to duplicate this. Actually, no, I won't duplicate it. I will just use this one first, and I'm going to click on my rectangle tool. To make sure that I click this one here, Tool, Create Mask, so that I can create the mask straight onto this path, and I create one half. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to be pressing Control D. I'm going to duplicate that, press S on my keyboard, uncheck my constraints here, and put a minus on here so that I inverse that shape. And then I'm just going to take that cloud and bring it back to here. Now we've lost our perfect shape going sideways, but that's easy enough to fix. If I'm just going to click on one of these clouds here, press UU on my keyboard again, and I can just edit the path of that cloud. So you click on the path, drag out that plume a little bit to the right. Now I may need to go to my mask, UU on the keyboard again, find my mask path, and just open up my mask. Okay, that's great. So now we have a plume of smoke traveling down, which is totally wrong. So I'm going to select both of these, and I'm going to press EE. EE will give me all my expressions that I've written, rather than having to open it up and try and find it again. And now my plume of smoke is traveling the wrong way, so I can go to my time and just put a minus value on both my times. Okay, and then select these both and press U on my keyboard. And now our paths, well, our cloud is going up in the air. Now we could make it a little bit more not so perfect. So I'm going to do the same thing again by just adding an adjustment layer, and I'm going to put another turbulent displacement over the top of it. And now we just got a slightly more organic looking cloud. Great. Now you might not want this cloud to have these really sharp corners. Maybe you didn't want quite a cartoony one, maybe you wanted something a little bit smoother looking. So we can do that. I'll show you how. So I'm going to type in blur under my presets, and I'm going to look for a Gaussian blur. Okay, drag over that Gaussian blur, and I'm going to pull my blurriness up on it. Okay, nice and blurry. And then I'm going to go to my levels. I'm going to drag the levels on here, and we're going to go to our RGB channel, drop that down, and go to alpha. Click that. And then we're just going to drag these two little arrows down to the middle. Now it's okay if you end up getting a little bit of a shadowing there that you can see, but we can just manage our input white a little bit before it breaks. There we go. And now we have this lovely plume of smoke that is rounded on the edges. Now you can just go back to your blurriness and decide how detailed you want that plume of smoke to be. You know, whether you want to feather them further out. Now, one thing I realized I didn't mention is another way to stylize the cloud. So we're going to go back to our cloud template. I'm going to duplicate that. And let's just call it cloud half. Okay, double click on cloud half. And I'm going to cut it in half, essentially. I'm going to go to a rectangle tool, click on that. Make sure that you click on this thing called Tools, Create Masks once again. Make sure you click on the layer and then click on them. Okay, so I'm going to cut my cloud like this. Okay, so this could be for more stylistic cloud. Now, sorry, before I do that, I'm just going to go and reverse the order of my offset because I want the cloud to go the other way. Okay, and now I'm happy. Okay, so we've got this going like that. We could transform, use a transform to skew the shape a bit. So I can click that on there. And what we can do is we can skew. Now the angle isn't correct. So if I just change this angle to 90 degrees, we've got a more angled cloud. That could just look a little bit cooler. You know, who knows, if you want to be doing someone like riding on a bicycle or running, you can get a cloud running below them. And to be a bit more realistic, let's just make that, time 200. Okay, so now it's going nice and fast. Okay, because that person's going to be speeding in their run. Now, you might want to kind of take a little bit further. So we can do that. The first thing we need to do is to crop our composition. All right, so you can go over here. So you have this regions of interest. And we are going to go nice and close in on our cloud. Okay. Let's just crop it about there. Okay. And now it's not going to crop itself, so we need to go to composition, and there should be something called crop, comp to region of interest. And now your crop to that region of interest. I may need to just move this a little bit further down. Okay, I'm happy with that. Okay, so now we have this cloud, and we're going to pre-compose it, which is Control Shift C, and just say slanted cloud, and we can go into our corner pin. Drag a corner pin over the top of this. Actually, maybe not a corner pin. I think maybe like a mesh. Is it mesh warp? Mesh warp? Yeah, mesh warp. I'm going to drag a mesh warp on here. We're going to change our rows to 2 and our columns to 2. Now it's gone, so I just need to click on the mesh warp again. Let's just zoom in so you can really see this. And we're just going to change this little point here. So say we want to angle the bottom bit of the cloud. We can also do this part too if we want to, which I don't think we need to. I think that angle is quite nice. So on and off. And now we've got a more kind of a stylistic warp to our cloud. In fact, let's just be much more extreme with that warp. Could maybe tease the corner in or up. Maybe this corner goes in tighter there, like that. So you've got a nice kind of like little whippy end on the end, like that. Yeah, that's quite cool. And you could put another turbulent displacement on. Might be worth it, might be not. And we can drop another one. That looks terrible, so maybe we can try a horizontal displacement so we don't actually affect that shape too much. And yeah, there's a more stylistic looking cloud. Now, I'm also noticing a little bit of a graininess there because we've distorted it so much. So we could just go back to the plume that I created, and I could just copy and paste this whole adjustment layer, and I can take it to my my cloud, and I can paste it over there, and maybe I'll turn off the Gaussian blur. So now, and turn off that turbulence displace because you don't need that. Great. So now what you've noticed with that levels, I've just put that levels and it's just crisped out all the outlines there for us. So at least it's not looking so yuck. I could put a Gaussian blur on it and maybe just soften it up. Maybe bring it down to like 12, but less. No, who knows? Maybe to clean it up a little bit, to round the edges, perhaps. Yeah, something like that, or without, whichever suits you better. Yeah, liking that. Right, I hope you enjoyed those tutorials. If you did, please like, share, and subscribe. That would give me confidence to continue creating them for you. Now, a while back, I had God put something on my heart that I was supposed to give a percentage of my YouTube channel to him, but I didn't. And a lot has changed over that while, and I realized, you know what, I got to do that. I got to give that to him. So I'm going to start small. I'm going to just say my favorite verse. It's John 3:16. For God so loved the world that he gave his one and only Son, that whoever believes in him shall not perish, but have eternal life. Guys, girls, Jesus is the way. If you are feeling weighted, if you are feeling you can't move on, you've probably heard his name a tons of times and you've ignored that call. But this is me telling you, he's a solution. He's the answer. He's the only way. God bless you guys. Bye.